Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, I have the news rumor here to discuss. We have some major news to talk about, including a couple of signings, captain change in Toronto, as well as a couple of offer sheets that have just happened. Love to hear some offer sheets happening. We'll go to that. Plus, we got some trade rumors involving the Oilers, the Maple Leafs, the Blue Jackets, and the Detroit Red Wings. And we'll go to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Instant Hockey channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. We're able to love you guys. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. And don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so we can all discuss in this video. Now we're going to start today's video off by discussing some signings from our past couple of days. I'm going to start today's video off by looking at two Flames signings. First, the Flames signed RFA left shot defenseman Yan Kuznetsov to a one-year league minimum deal. He was an RFA. This past year, put up 5 goals and 13 points in 63 games after having 5 goals and 19 points in 63 games the year prior. So he looks pretty good. Looks like he can potentially be a solid third-pair defenseman eventually for the Flames. Maybe be a call-up option if it gets to that point for the Flames this year, so it's a possibility. Also got into his first game of NHL action, putting up no points. So he looks like a pretty good defenseman prospect there for the Flames. I think Kuznetsov eventually should be a third-pair defenseman. It could be a call-up option this year too for the Flames, so that's a pretty good solid sign there for the Flames to get Kuznetsov signed. Next, they also signed another one of the RFAs, and that was right winger Adam Klapka, who did get into some NHL action this year, putting up 1 goal and 1 point in 6 NHL games this year. Also put up 21 goals and 46 points in 65 AHL games after putting up 13 goals and 25 points in 60 AHL games the year prior. So Klapka looks like a pretty good prospect. I think he could eventually vie for like a bottom 6 role. Most likely probably next year. Klapka will be an AHL player who can be called up if there's injuries. So another interesting sign there. 1-year league minimum is not too bad. I think Klapka should be a solid player for the AHL affiliates for the Flames. And when he's called upon, a really good player there at the NHL level. So pretty good stuff there for the Flames. Then the New Jersey Devils extended one of their RFAs. Nolan Foote, who was one of their RFAs, gets a 1-year contract with the AV of $825,000 at the beginning of the start of next year. Foote has been up and down over the past couple of years. Last year had 20 goals and 37 points in 55 AHL games and a goal in 6 NHL games. This past year, only playing 4 NHL and 4 AHL games, putting up 4 points at the AHL level, 3 goals, and only putting up a goal in 4 NHL games. So has been up and down over the past little while. Was definitely injured a lot last year, but still, I think he's a very fantastic player who I think should be able to at least contend this year for a bottom 6 role, and if he's not able to get it, should be a player who should go to the minors. So interesting stuff there, but that's a pretty good pickup there for the Devils to sign Nolan Foote. So some interesting signings from our past couple of days. Going over to a quick trade that happened. Now, this was small and insignificant earlier today, but this actually is going to be a huge piece as to why there were 2 offer sheets earlier today. And the trade is as follows. The St. Louis Blues acquired their 2025 second round pick, which they gave to the Pittsburgh Penguins as part of the Kevin Hayes deal earlier this year, and the Penguins 2026 fifth round pick from Pittsburgh. In exchange, the St. Louis Blues give Pittsburgh their own 2026 second round pick and the Senators next year 2025 third round pick. So basically it's the Senators third rounder in next year's draft and the Blues second rounder in 2 years of the draft. Trade to the Pittsburgh Penguins. In exchange, the Blues get their own second round pick next year back and a fifth rounder 2026 draft from the Pittsburgh Penguins as well. So interesting swap there. Now this might seem like an insignificant trade, but it makes a couple offer sheets be able to happen. This is a decent swap. I mean, the Penguins definitely come away with the winners here because they're able to get a third round pick while the Blues get a fifth round pick. Both teams get a second round pick, but this is a decent swap for both sides. I do think Pittsburgh wins it, but this is a pick swap that makes 2 offer sheets possible. And here are the offer sheets. It's Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway from the Edmonton Oilers being offer sheeted by the St. Louis Blues, and the offer sheets are as follows. The St. Louis Blues offer sheet Dylan Holloway to a 2-year contract with an AV of $2.290457 million, and the St. Louis Blues also offer sheet Philip Broberg. Broberg gets a 2-year deal as well with an AV of $4.580917 million. So all in all, the Blues are really handicapping the Oilers. So we talked about this a while ago, that Frank Seravalli mentioned that if a team offered Philip Broberg at like 6 years at $4.5 million, the Oilers would be hard pressed to do that. While the Blues have done it for 2 years at $4.580 million. and they offer sheet Holloway, who's got $2.29 million AAV. Now, the compensation for both these guys, Holloway would be a third-round pick if they were to successfully offer sheet him. Broberg would be a second-round pick, and $1 more, and it would have had to been a first and a third for Broberg, and it would have had to been a second for Holloway. So this is a really smart move there from the Blues GM and from the Blues organization. Broberg could easily fit into their top 4. I think this automatically means that Torrey Krug will not play next year. There's a lot of speculation about if he will probably need surgery. He may be out for a 24-25 season. I think that's most likely going to happen now after this offer sheeting of Philip Broberg. They also get Dylan Holloway, who could be a really speedy third-line forward for his team. So I have the Blues right now is missing the playoffs. These could get them closer to the playoff mark, in my opinion. This is some really great moves there from the St. Louis Blues. Now, this is going to handicap the Oilers, so I'll talk about what they may need to do in a little bit of time, but this is an interesting move. So the Blues have offer sheet Broberg for $4.58 million, offer sheet Holloway for $2.29 million. They would have to give up a second and third round pick, which is why they need to reclaim their second round pick for next year from the Pittsburgh Penguins. And if they're able to get both these players, that'll be a fantastic improvement for the St. Louis Blues to trying to improve the team next year. So interesting move there, but the Blues have offer sheet 2 players. So an interesting move there. We do, like we said, have an announcement that should be coming in the next day or two, maybe by the time it hits YouTube if it gets posted on Wednesday. And that's the Toronto Maple Leafs have scheduled a press conference and intends to make Austin Matthews the new captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now that's interesting to note. John Tavares is still with the team. He was the captain since I think a couple of years ago. I think it was since like 2019 and 2020, if I'm correct, maybe even a little bit earlier, that Tavares has been captain of that team, but still, Tavares was captain for an extremely long period of time, and the Maple Leafs front office feels like it's time to give the captaincy to Matthews. It seems like I think it was the 26th captain in Leafs history, so interesting stuff there. I do think Matthews deserves the captaincy. He's been a really great leader during that first round series against Boston when he was healthy, besides missing games 5 and 6. He was easily one of the biggest point contributors on that team. He was one of the leaders on that team. So I can see why they want to give him the captaincy, but to strip Tavares of it is interesting. The last time we saw a player be stripped of his captaincy and still play out his contract was Blake Wheeler a couple of years ago with the Jets. They stripped him of his captaincy, didn't have a captain that year, and Wheeler wound up walking as a free agent next year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Tavares and if this sort of creates a rift between him and the Maple Leafs. But it does seem like tomorrow or today, whenever this is hitting YouTube, Tavares will be removed of being captain and Matthews will be named the 26th captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So interesting stuff there, but it does seem like Matthews will be the new captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. We're going to start here with the Detroit Red Wings. Now, when it comes to the Detroit Red Wings, I was looking at an article. Once again, these are just speculations, no real rumors discussing any of these sorts of players being potentially on the block. But there was an article I saw speculating about 3 players who could wind up being moved by the Detroit Red Wings in the not too distant future. And there were some interesting names on this list. The most likely one that they said was Justin Holl. Holl, I think, got 2 years left, if I'm correct, at a $3.34 million cap hit. He signed last year, started out really well, was one of the highest plus-minus players in the NHL, but towards the end of the season tailed off, was eventually a healthy scratch most of the time, which is what he was in Toronto a couple of times too. But being paid $3 million to be a healthy scratch is not overly fantastic, and the Red Wings do have a couple of decent younger guys, like a Simone Edmondson or William Willander, who I think could really help that team. So I could see Holl be moved. It would be an extremely difficult trade to make if you're the Red Wings, trying to move off that whole contract, but I think they would try and do so. Ville Husso is another one. We mentioned this a while ago. We've mentioned this a couple of times now. Detroit has 4 NHL level goaltenders. They have Husso, they have Talbot, they have Laine, and they have Campbell. Now, Campbell's probably going to go on waivers and go in the minors. This will be no one claims him. But you have Talbot, you have Husso, and you have Laine. They could run with another 3-goalie system, which is what they did last year with Laine, Reimer, and Husso, and maybe it works for them. But there's a very likely chance, in my opinion, that they still try and move on from Husso. He's entering the final year of his deal. He's got $4.5 million on his cap hit. There could be a couple of teams out there who could use a solid 1B goaltender if the Red Wings are willing to retain at least a little bit of money. I think there could be a taker or two out there to try and add a guy like Ville Husso, so we're going to have to wait and see, but Husso's definitely another name I think is going to be out there for Red Wings. And lastly was Jonathan Berggren. He was mentioned, I think, around the trade deadline and maybe earlier in the offseason as a potential trade chip. Berggren, I think, is entering the final year of his deal. He's an RFA, but a lot of people think that he's sort of been boxed out of the Red Wings organization. So some people think that there's a very likely chance that Berggren definitely doesn't make the team. He probably will want out of Detroit. So it's another interesting situation. He's a younger player. Looks like he's eventually going to be a solid third-line player at some point in his career. So I think there could be a couple of teams out there who could really use a younger guy like a Berggren in their top 9. So it'll be interesting to see. But according to this article I saw, guys like Holl, who I think is definitely not worked out overly well so far with Detroit, as well as Husso, who I think is a goaltender they could definitely try and move, and Jonathan Berggren, who might be a younger guy who wants a fresh start, could all be potential trade chips. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But I definitely agree that those 3 guys could all be trade chips for Detroit Red Wings in the not too distant future. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Going over to the Blue Jackets, we talked about a whole bunch over the past couple of weeks, so I'm not going to linger on this too much, but it sounds like there's been a couple of more updates on the Patrick Laine sweepstakes. One, it sounds like the Washington Capitals are out on Patrick Laine and probably not going to acquire him. It seems like, I'm guessing, it's too much money for them, and they've already made so many moves this offseason. Do they really want to make another one? So it seems like the Laine to Washington rumor is sort of not there anymore, and they're probably not going to acquire him. So I could see the Caps try and make some more moves. There's still some sounding out there like Oshie's career is probably likely over, so it could wind up happening like that. So we're going to have to wait and see, but I think there's a very likely chance that we could see Laine not go to Washington, so we'll have to wait and see on that. On top of Laine not going to Washington, Anthony DeMarco, who was part of the fourthperiod.com, if I'm correct, was talking about the Blue Jackets as well, and he thinks that a really good fit for Laine might be the New York Islanders. Now, I agree with him. We talked about the Islanders a little bit when it comes to Patrick Laine. They could be a really good fit for him. If they could get the Jackets to eat a decent amount of caps hits and have them take on a bad contract like a Jean-Gabriel Pageau or maybe even an Anders Lee, there would be a really likely chance there for that trade to work out. I mean, they would probably need to include a couple other things, like maybe a second-round pick, a young prospect, maybe a guy like Oliver Wahlstrom. We talked about him potentially being moved on from. So there could be a decent trade package here from the Islanders side of things that I think could intrigue the Blue Jackets. And on top of that, the Islanders definitely need more goal scoring. If Laine can find his fit with maybe a guy like Barzal on the top line, or maybe even a guy like Nelson on the second line, I think he could go back to a 30 to 40 goal form. So it'll be interesting to see. Not saying that the Islanders are front runners or potentially the team to land Laine, but it does seem like, according to Anthony DeMarco, he thinks that would be a really good fit for Laine. So according to a couple of recent reports, it sounds like Washington's sort of out on Laine and probably not going to acquire him, and DeMarco thinks that there's a very likely chance that the Islanders could be a really good fit there for Laine. So I'll have to wait and see what happens there with Laine. Going over to the Toronto Maple Leafs, now we just talked about how Matthews is going to be a new captaincy. A lot of people are wondering what's going to happen with Tavares now. This, to me at least, sort of seems a similar way to what the Blake Wheeler was a couple of years ago. He was entered in the final year of his deal. They stripped him of his captaincy. He had a decent season, but then walked as a free agent the year after. I think there's a very likely chance this could wind up being the exact same thing that happened with Tavares. He might still stay. If he was, he'd probably have to sign like a 3-year deal, like $5 to $6 million. But I think there's a very likely chance that with Tavares getting up there in age, his production dropping over the past little while, and now them stripping him of his captaincy, I think there's a very likely chance that at the very least Tavares doesn't re-sign with Toronto next year. Maybe he does, but it looks like it's more likely now that he's probably going to walk as a free agent. Does he get moved in season? It's possible. I highly doubt it. The Leafs, in my opinion, have to be on the outside looking in, and Tavares will have to be having a fantastic season for anyone to sort of try and make that sort of a deal work. But I could see it happening. I guess it's a possibility, but we're going to have to wait and see. So Tavares has been stripped of his captaincy, and that's led a lot of people to wonder if this could be Tavares' final season in Toronto, which I think is quite likely a possibility after seeing what happened a couple of years ago with Blake Wheeler. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. And lastly, what the heck are the Edmonton Oilers going to do now? Those offer sheets from the St. Louis Blues are putting them in salary cap mayhem right now. I mean, if you look at their cap situation, they match both things, and they keep Broberg and Holloway. You're looking at an extra $6.87 million on your cap. And not just for this year, for next year too. And if you look at next year, they need to sign Draisaitl. They need to sign Broberg. There's a lot of talk about those guys getting, like Draisaitl getting like $12, $13, $14 million. Broberg getting like $8-9 million, maybe even 9+, given the fact that Nurse is already making 9+. So there's a lot of talk about that, and they're basically going to be giving the entire cap jump from next year to Broberg and Holloway if they match both of those contracts. So there's a very likely chance they don't match both of them. And if they don't, then that's a huge blow. So in my opinion, it's going to be interesting to see. I've seen a lot of people say that they just should put Kane on IR and move one of CC or Kulak, which is a possibility. But I think, if memory serves me correct, they have to be cap compliant before they're able to place players in long-term injury reserve. So I don't think you can place Kane in long-term injury reserve before you can have a cap compliant roster. So I think the Oilers may be in an extremely big pickle here, and new GM Stan Bowman is going to have to do some interesting work to try and keep both these guys. Like I said, CC's been in a trade chip for an extremely long period of time. He's got over $3 million cap hit, only signed for this year left. I think there's a very likely chance that they're going to move him. Now, with the situation that the Oilers are in right now, could a couple of lower end teams like, say, Chicago, Anaheim, San Jose say, okay, we'll take CC on, but you're going to have to give us the second or third round pick to do so. That could be something that a team could try and extract out of the Oilers to take on the CC contract, with the Oilers now being in an extreme bind, in my opinion. I mean, if last time we saw an offer sheet, it wound up going through. That was the Carolina Hurricanes. I think it was back in 2021, if I'm correct, maybe 2022. It was after the Aho situation in 2019. The Canes made an interesting offer sheet, 1 year, $6 million for Kotkaniemi. It worked. The team who wound up going offer sheet, which was the Montreal Canadiens, wound up taking that compensation and flipping it for Christian Dvorak. Now, the Canadiens at that point had a ton of cap space, and that was a little bit more of a revenge offer sheet for trying to offer sheet Sebastian Aho. This one's not a revenge offer sheet or anything of that type. This is just a really smart move from the St. Louis Blues. So, I mean, if they do match these offer sheets, then they're setting themselves up for an extremely tough time of signing both Draisaitl and Bouchard next year. If they don't match these offer sheets, they're losing a solid top 9 speedy forward who actually played really, really well down the stretch in this Cup final run, and a 4th, 5th defenseman who really flourished in that third pair role last year with Edmonton during the playoff run as well. So this is a really tough tight cap situation for the Oilers. Like we said, they're, I think, just a hair under the cap right now. Move CC and they're able to keep Holloway, but I highly doubt they're going to be able to keep Broberg. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there. But we have 2 offer sheets, and that's put Edmonton in an extremely tight cap situation. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But that's what we're going to talk about for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this. What do you think about the Edmonton Oilers? Who do they wind up moving? Can they just place Kane on long-term injury reserve, or are they going to have to move some pieces? Could CC be moved? Could Kulak be moved? Is there anyone else on that team that could be moved? Definitely have to hear your thoughts on that. What do you think about Tavares? Does he extend in Toronto, or after being stripped of his captaincy, is this going to be a final season with Toronto and Tavares? What do you think about Laine? Could he go to NYI, and if so, what sort of team could try and acquire him? And what do you think about Detroit? Could they move Holl? Could they move Husso? Could they move Berggren? Definitely have your thoughts on that. Plus, what do you think about Matthews most likely being the new captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs? The offer sheets by the St. Louis Blues on Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. What do you think about the trade between the Blues and the Penguins, and the signings, including the Devils signing Foote and the Flames signing 2 RFAs to 1-year league minimum deals? Definitely let me get your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk about for today. Until this video, if you like to subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. We're able to help you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so you can also watch today's video. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. Leave a link in the description below. And can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.